Alright, this is the second in a series of 3 recordings for the anterior abdominal wall and various other awesome stuff. Alright, so the objectives for this mini recording are to describe and discuss the inguinal canal and some of its important structures, so that's where we'll focus on. Alright, so basic definition of the inguinal region is listed in orange, and the inguinal region is highlighted by the red oval. Some of the major structures or the parts of the inguinal region: one is the inguinal ligament, and number two is the inguinal canal, and an important structure within the inguinal canal is the spermatic cord in males, round ligament in females. So we'll discuss each of these in turn. Alright, so the inguinal ligament. The inguinal ligament is a dense thickening of external oblique aponeurosis, which forms a band or a ligament that runs from the anterior superior iliac spine down to the pubic tubercle. Alright, so that's a basic definition of the inguinal ligament. Alright, the inguinal canal. The inguinal canal is a channel running along the inguinal ligament, and it pierces the lower lateral abdominal wall. So you can see that it starts at the blue circle, which is called the deep inguinal ring. Now, at that deep inguinal ring, you actually have a hole where this channel starts, and it pierces through, number one, following the black arrows, the parietal peritoneum. Then it pierces through the transversalis fascia. Then it goes through the transverse abdominal muscle, through the internal oblique muscle, and then finally it runs along the inguinal ligament, which is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis, and it opens at the superficial inguinal ring, which is the orange circle, which is at the medial aspect of the external oblique aponeurosis. So you have this channel that's running through all of those different structures, starting at the deep ring and then passing through and ending at the superficial ring. The contents of the inguinal canal: number one, in males is the spermatic cord, and we'll talk about what that is. In females, the round ligament of the uterus, which is the sort of female homologous structure to the spermatic cord, and it's responsible for suspending the uterus inside the pelvic cavity. And then the third thing that you'll find in there is the ilioinguinal nerve, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in another lecture. Alright, so the spermatic cord. The spermatic cord, again, is only found in males. In females, it's the round ligament. But the spermatic cord is important because it contains a number of structures that are running to and from the testes, and it suspends the testes within the scrotum. So the contents within the spermatic cord, number one, and most importantly, is the vas deferens, and this is that muscular tube that's carrying sperm from the testes to the urethra in the penis. Testicular artery is the artery that's supplying the testes. It's coming off of the aorta and running in the spermatic cord. The pampiniform venous plexus is just a venous network that is within the spermatic cord, and ultimately those are all going to unify to form a single testicular vein, one on the right, one on the left. You're going to find lymphatics for the testes and the sympathetic fibers to the testes, and then you're going to find the cremaster muscle. And this muscle controls the position of the testes within the scrotum, and that helps to closely regulate the temperature of the testes. And finally, you have the genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve. Again, we'll talk more about these nerves in a different lecture. So that's the contents of the spermatic cord. Again, here's another view of the spermatic cord, but also all those different layers of the inguinal canal that you can see passing through. Alright, finally, the last thing to talk about is the inguinal triangle. And the inguinal triangle is important. It has clinical significance, so understanding the boundaries of this inguinal triangle and the position relative to the deep ring and the superficial ring is really important clinically. So You can see the boundaries. Laterally is the inferior epigastric artery, which we talked about in the earlier lecture. Inferiorly, you have the inguinal ligament, and then medially, you have the lateral border of the rectus abdominis muscle, and so you end up with this nice triangle with the superficial ring inside the triangle and the deep ring outside the triangle. And so there's some clinical significance to that, which we'll talk about in class. So just by way of summary, inguinal ligament, talked about the inguinal canal, how it's formed, the spermatic cord, which is traveling in the inguinal canal, and the inguinal triangle.